What's going on? The 244th edition of the MMA podcast. A beautiful Friday, TGIF, September 14th, joined as usual by Sweet Pappy Jones. He's known as on Twitter or simply just P Money. Pat, what's up, brother?
Jake, oh man, it is a fantastic Friday. In spite of some mute button issues, we are just maxing and relaxing. It's we're headed into fall here. The UFC schedule's in full swing. I am amped, my friend.
Hell yeah, and we got a little bit to break down, of course, starting with this past weekend. We had UFC 228. Don't want to go into too much detail because it was a little while ago. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've heard recaps ad nauseum. But before we get to breaking down the fights, I think we did our preview of that fight card Thursday evening, and just like it usually works out, I think less than 12 hours later, the co-main event of the card was scrapped. Nico Montano was apparently rushed to the hospital, pulled off the card. Valentina Shevchenko, who was the heavy favorite, I believe she was the biggest betting favorite for any UFC title challenger in the history of the promotion. She also becomes the only fighter to have two title fights canceled because her opponent pulled out. So definitely an unfortunate stat there. The title stripped from Nico as she is rushed to the hospital and all that. Her management kind of upset with the decision to strip her of the title. But, after the history of what's gone on, she has, the last 6 or 7 months kind of seemed not sheepish to fight Valentina, but definitely seemed a little hesitant to step up to the plate. Do you think she should have been stripped?
Oh, I would say, and there's been reports that she showed up to fight week in the, if I'm not mistaken, Jake, I want to say 140 plus pound range in fight week when you're supposed to make 115 pounds.
Actually, 125 pounds. This was the flyweight.
That's right. I'm 1,000 pardons. Still a little early over here, Pacific Standard Time, but still, we're talking about almost 20 pounds in a week when your total body mass is 125 pounds. That's like well over a fifth of your weight. Yeah,
and regardless of what she did weigh, she obviously didn't prepare enough. And from listening to an interview, I believe, with Misha Tate, who coached a little bit on that season of Tough that Nico was on, she made weight 3 times during the Tough season, and it wasn't even necessarily that hard for her. She's not one of these girls who is naturally a 135er and is fighting down at 125. It didn't seem like the biggest issue for her to cut down to 25, on top of the fact that everyone was getting ready for just an absolute slaughtering. Even Valentina herself said that she had doubts going into the fight before the fight was canceled that the fight would go down, and she ended up being right about that. So if Montano really is interested in fighting for the title, she still can work herself back up the division, and she might be right too that maybe she didn't do anything wrong. She, I think, compared herself to Max Holloway, who recently backed out of a title fight as champion, but instead of being stripped, the fight was just rescheduled. I would compare this more to a Tony Ferguson's type situation. And I do agree with her getting stripped, because when it comes down to it, there is just too much talent at 125, and keeping the belt on Montano, who, hasn't fought, hasn't been active, isn't fair to the rest of the division. And I've heard whispers of Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That would seem to make sense. I don't think Joanna is going to get another crack at 115 anytime soon after getting back-to-back shots and getting finished both times. She and Shevchenko have a history outside the sport in Muay Thai, and the cut to 115 is legendarily hard for Joanna. So I think a fight between Valentina and Joanna for the women's flyweight title would be very appropriate. We'll move on to the card, UFC 228. A lot of fun fights. You know, I was bitching a little bit before the card that it might not be as deep as other pay-per-views this year, but I gotta hand it to the fighters. It was a fun time. Darren Stewart with a vicious TKO. How about Jeff Neal? My God, probably should have earned 50K for that head kick knockout over Frank Camacho. Our boy Aljamain Sterling, big knee bar over Cody Stamann. Tatiana Suarez doing what we expected. She was a big favorite. TKO's Carla Esparza in the third round. Anything we may as well throw the Al Hassan Rivera and Magomed Shapirov fights in there, along with Jessica Andrade's big KO, probably the biggest KO we've ever seen in the women's strawweight division. Everything, I guess, except that main fight between Woodley and Till. What stood out for you there?
I mean, on 228, Jake, this whole card was just fantastic from top to bottom. And, you know, I think I mentioned it a little bit on the previous podcast. Matchmaking was very nice here, even if the names weren't the biggest. But, I mean, it was very nice seeing Jim Miller and Diego Sanchez get big wins. Some very long-tenured UFC vets coming out and looking great. Irene Aldana versus Lucy Pudilova. That was one of the craziest, best women's mixed martial arts fights I think I'd ever seen. Amazing. Definitely deserving of fight of the night there. I mean, it was just solid scraps from top to bottom. Tatiana Suarez defeating Carla Esparza, definitely looking like the female Khabib. I mean, that wrestling, the way she manipulated Carla Esparza there and just pounded on her for 3 rounds until the TKO finally came. Fantastic. As you mentioned, Jeff Neal with the frightening knockout of Frank Camacho. That was just brutality. He was putting it on Frank all night. I mean, Razak Al Hassan, TKO and Nico Price in big fashion. It was just literally stacked from top to bottom. Jessica Andrade defeating Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Just fantastic. Every fight on this whole card was amazing.
And I don't think we would leave out the main event too. That was a super entertaining championship fight between Tyron Woodley and Darren Till. Just a dominant performance by Woodley, who, you know, Till is still young, still very green. You know, a lot of commentators had a lot of criticism for Till for giving up that submission, which, you know, might be fair, because when you're in that spot that Till was, he should have known the Darce was coming and seemed absolutely 100% just caught off guard when Woodley ended up applying that choke and getting him. But, you know, Till has admitted in prior interviews that his weakest link is his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I fully expect, you know, that to see that part of his game tighten up as he gets older and gets more experienced. But, yeah, what did you make of this dominant second round finished by Woodley? And is he now in the conversation of greatest welterweight of all time?
People really need to pump their brakes on Tyron being the GOAT. He went from the most boring welterweight champion ever to barely having any legit defenses to now all of a sudden he's the GOAT after one fight. He definitely looked great. It was a fantastic performance. You know, it wasn't the wrestling like I think a lot of people had postulated. It was the speed and the power that Tyron has in those hands. He just was too quick for Till on the night and hit him with a big shot, dropped him, and hit him with some vicious ground and pound from there. But it wasn't the groundwork that did it. So, you know, we're seeing that Tyron is getting comfortable with the striking again, letting it go. but yeah, I mean, come on. He had a draw with Wonder Boy in his first fight. His second fight was, you probably could have said he should have lost that one. The Maya fight was very nonplussed. I mean, so yeah, we definitely need to cool it with all this GOAT talk of him being the greatest at 170 pounds ever. He's fought some tough competition, and it was a fantastic fight against a gigantic competitor until, I mean, the speed and the power. I mean, Tyron just had too much of it. Was able to get in and shut Darren Till down. Darren Till looked very gun shy. Spent the whole first round basically just feeling out Tyron Woodley just to get punched in the face and sacked in the second round and just completely taken out. Yeah, very underwhelming performance from Till, but his first time in a UFC championship fight, and Tyron, really putting it together in this performance. It was a fantastic title fight, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans get the GOAT talk confused with just, turning into a legend talk. This is definitely turning into a legendary title run. When you have defended your belt 4+ times, that is nothing to turn your nose at. I believe he is the only current 4-time defending champion. I believe Cormier has defended that light heavyweight strap 3 times. Amanda Nunes, also a 3-time defending champion, while Cyborg has defended it twice. Rose, TJ, and Holloway, all 1-time defending champions. So he is the longest reigning champ right now. He's putting together a legendary title run, but GSP got up to 9. I think he had 9 in a row once he beat Johnny, and then dropped it himself. It wasn't like he lost. So yeah, get 5 more, and then we can start to talk about you as the GOAT of 170. We are going to jump over to this week's UFC Moscow card in a second, but I just wanted to play, without comment, these 2 quick 30-second clips. Tyron Woodley, as he beat up Darren Till, was, of course, being watched by tons of fans at sports bars all over the country, one of which was Snoop Dogg, who apparently confused Darren Till for his previously scheduled opponent, Colby Covington. Snoop Dogg apparently not being a big fan of Donald Trump, seeing that Colby Covington was a big fan and was recently at the White House, had some very choice words for Darren Till, who this I guess came across a little racist, because Till, not even American, 0 ties to Trump at all, being just torn apart by Snoop Dogg. And then after that, I will play the response from Colby Covington, who was asked about Snoop Dogg's comments on, I'm not sure which show. I'll give him credit if I can find it. But we'll start off with Snoop Dogg.
Tap this nigga out. Tap his bitch ass out, nigga. Yeah, nigga, Black Panther, nigga. Wakanda, tap out, nigga. Wakanda, nigga. Wakanda forever. Fuck Donald Trump, nigga. You ain't no gorilla, nigga. You's a fucking ding-dong. Me King Kong.
So calling Darren Till a ding-dong, amongst other words that I won't say on the podcast. Here is Colby's response to all of that.
Hey, one more thing. I want to make sure that everybody knows, fuck Snoop Dogg, that little California soy boy. He deleted my comment. I put a comment on his Instagram, and he because he was trying to talk shit during the fight. He was saying, fuck Donald Trump. Fuck that, when Tyron Woodley was fighting Till. Till's from fucking England. He has nothing to do with Trump or America. So what kind of fucking gangster rapper lives in a fucking safe space? Fucking Snoop Dogg, or AKA, it's really Calvin. Calvin, fuck you. You little crusty old stick figure with Tourette's.
And I'll give credit to Flow Combat for that one. they seem to be on a collision course with each other. So we will see if officially the fight is made anytime soon between Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. I still think that makes a ton of sense. Apparently, Colby will be on the rack until November. Got a little surgery to fix his sinuses. Woodley has said he is ready to jump back in as soon as possible. It would be a amazing addition to that MSG card. So we shall see. Bits of MMA news as well. Speaking of Rafael dos Anjos, Colby Covington's most recent opponent, he has a new opponent. They're going to be fighting at the end of this year at that tough finale card, and it's going to be a real fun fight with him and Kamaru Usman. Definitely the biggest test that the former tough winner himself has been given. Both of these guys killers. You have one guy who is a UFC vet and legend at this point, taking on one of the brightest young stars in Usman. I don't know if a line has been made or yet anything. I guess I'm kind of leaning toward Usman just because he's looked so great. Seems along with Till to be poised to be a future champion in that division at 170. What do you think about this match between Kamaru Usman and RDA? It should be fireworks.
This fight, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not 100% excited for this one. I mean, Kamaru Usman is kind of like very similar to Colby Covington in just the respect that their fighting style is just super heavy grappling. Not always the most fan friendly, but RDA, he always brings it. I think he'll make it a little bit of a fight. And kind of like Tyron Woodley versus Darren Till, I'm picking RDA at least early to overthrow the up and coming Kamaru Usman. I mean, Usman is a beast. This is going to be definitely his best, one of his best tests at 170 pounds right now. But I like the versatility that Dos Anjos has with his strikes as well as his grappling skills. I usually vote with the guy with more tools in the toolbox. I think Rafael dos Anjos is gonna get this one done.
All right, you're leaning RDA. I'm leaning Kamaru. Another fight we're going to see at UFC 232. BJ Penn, and no, I'm not joking, is taking on Ryan Hall. We could go into this, and we probably will at UFC 232. I think the consensus of most fans, including BJ Penn fans, is that he would hang them up. This is a winnable fight, though, for Penn, so maybe he can finish it with an exciting win. Who knows? But another fight coming down the line for BJ Penn at UFC 232. We only have a couple more minutes, so I guess we'll make our picks for UFC Moscow. That main event has a lot of familiar names on it. Thiago Alves, Andrei Arlovsky, Jan Blachowicz, Mark Hunt taking on Alexei Olnik. In this card, I believe it starts the main card Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. It is going to be Saturday night in Moscow, which means afternoon, late morning for us in the States. What fights are you most looking forward to on the card? And I guess those top three fights are pretty even as far as Vegas sees. Mark Hunt, a slight favorite. Nikita Krylov, a slight favorite. And Shamil Abdurakhimov, a slight favorite over the longtime vet Andrei Arlovsky. What do you think about this main card creeping up in Moscow?
Yeah, I think the main card looks real good. Hunt versus Olenek, Blachowicz versus Krylov, Arlovsky versus Abdurakhimov, even Alves versus Konchenko. Should be a very nice main card, and the prelims have some great fighters too. Rustam Habilov, Mirabek Taisimov. Man, it's gonna be some good scraps over here. I'm really
Dalloway.
CB Dalloway, the Doberman. He's gonna be there. Gonna be I'm hoping another UFC 228 night of fights. With some good jobs by the matchmakers and hopefully some good action.